Yes, you did. Made it weird.
What's happening, weirdos? This is Bob Crawford. Bob Crawford from the Avett Brothers. I am such a huge fan of the Avett Brothers. Huge fan of Bob as a person, not only as a bassist and vocalist and fiddleist and occasional trumpetist for the Avett Brothers, one of my favorite bands in the world, but he's also one of my favorite people in the world. He's incredible. He's deep. He's thoughtful. He's beautiful. And I had this chat with him. It was a while back, but we sat on it for a minute, and I'm happy to be finally releasing it with you guys. And I spoke to him in his home over the Zoomables, and I'm so glad we got in touch. You guys need to see them live. The Avett Brothers are currently on tour, which is something that I'm not even close to done being grateful for the fact that we can tour again, the Avett Brothers. We can go see the Avett Brothers again. Go to theavettbrothers.com/tour for tickets to those. If you go to any of them that are in California, take a look around. You'll probably see me and Val there, hooting and hollering along with you. Don't hoot and holler during this, after the songs, not during the songs. Don't be that guy. I'm also, this is the silliest intro. I'm also going to be I am on the road, I guess you can say, even though it's not, I'm recording this at home. But go to PeteHolmes.com if you'd like to see me live doing stand-up. It's the Where Were We tour. I'm so thrilled to be back with live audience crowds in cities other than Los Angeles. Thrilled. Thank you to everybody that came to Toronto, Atlantic City, Boston. Up next is Chicago, which is sold out, except we just added a late show on Saturday at the Den Theater. So please come out to those. It's going to be so fun to be in Chicago, the city that I pretty much, I know I did it a few times in Boston, but I consider Chicago to be the city where I learned how to do stand-up. And it's always so fun to come back. So please come out to the Den. Go to PeteHolmes.com for tickets. That's November 10, 11, and 12. After that, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Atlanta, Charlotte, and Washington, D.C. And hopefully we'll be adding some more dates very, very soon. And if you like this show, why not try, why not try a Pete's Pick? Ads for things that I actually use and actually love, like Living Libations. Living Libations has done a complete overhaul of all of our hair, skin, teeth, and baby products. We are a Living Libations family. It all started because I realized I was being very careful about what I was putting in my body when it came to food, but I really had never given it any thought about what I was putting on my body. Sunblock, skincare, moisturizer, all of these things are often filled with a lot of chemicals that you just don't want getting into your body, and the things you put on your body do get into your body, and that's where Living Libations comes into play. This is a great way to support the show because they have little things and they have big things. Like we use their zinc-based sunscreen. It's called Love the Sun. Leela is in preschool now, which means every morning we have to slather her head to toe in sunscreen. And just with the littlest amount of effort, looking on Amazon, all of the stuff that they call natural and like some sort of alternative to chemical sunblocks, they're still filled with chemicals. I don't know what's going on here. It's like a huge hoax. If you want an actually natural, actually zinc-based sunblock that works fantastic, feels great on your skin, and you can put something on your kid that you don't feel terrible about, use Living Libations. Their Love the Sun sunscreen is incredible. And also use it on yourself. I mean, you're worth it. I'm going to tell you, you're worth it. I use their ginger exfoliating scrub, which is not only natural and made with ingredients that I can recognize and pronounce, but it's also it's the most badass exfoliant I've ever used in my life. Use it before you shave. The razor just glides. It glides, baby, through the Zen Shave. Zen Shave is Living Libations' shaving balm, which again is so clean. The ingredients are so clean and so natural, you can actually use a dab of it as your aftershave. Try doing that with some anonymous neon blue goo that you buy at 7-Eleven. Whatever you need, great way to support the show. Face, body, eyes, teeth, even baby products. Living Libations has a premium, natural, and wonderful product to replace the random chemical nightmare they sell at 7-Eleven. Go to livinglibations.com and use promo code WEIRD, capital W-E-I-R-D, November, capital November. Weird November, both first words capitalized. That's the code for this month. You will get yourself 15% off, and you'll be doing your face, your skin, your teeth, whatever it is, your body, a favor, and showing your support of the show. That's livinglibations.com, promo code Weird November. Get into it. Secondly, do you love podcasts? Yeah, you do. You're listening to this one right now. Or even better, maybe you're thinking about starting a podcast, or maybe you want to record an album, or maybe do voiceover for that cartoon series that you've been wanting to upload to YouTube. Well, all of those things start with incredible microphones, and, you know, they need to be amazing. They need to give you that amazing in-studio quality, but if it's possible, we don't want to pay that huge studio costs. Well, guess what? Blue microphones have got you covered. I'm speaking into a Blue microphone right now. This is the Sona. It's the Blue Sona XLR mic, which is very high-end. It sounds incredible. It's the best mic we've ever owned, ever used. But we actually started this podcast with Blue's most famous mic, which is the Blue Yeti. It's their USB mic that you can just plug right into your computer and start podcasting, start animating, recording, whatever you need to do with voiceover, with recording, music. It sounds great. Even if you're new to recording, it requires absolutely no training or expertise. It's truly plug and play. It's also the only USB mic I found that has different settings for solo, sitting across from another person, and omnidirectional for when you want to record every sound in the room. Literally never found another one with all of those different settings, and is also so easy to use. So cool. It's made by the same company that makes high-end studio mics that have been used on so many major, huge hit records. Same technology is behind these ones. Blue have been around for more than 20 years, and today Blue is part of Logitech for creators. And as I mentioned, if you're watching the video, I'm touching it right now. This is the Blue Sona XLR mic for podcasters. We use this, and as you can tell, it's upped our game quite a bit. So, what are you waiting for? If you want to do it, and do it well, anything with your voice, with music, with sound, go to bluemic.com and use promo code WEIRD for a special deal on any Blue microphone and show your support of the show. Again, that's bluemic.com. You're my boy, Blue. And use promo code WEIRD for a special deal on any Blue microphone and show your support of this show. Last but certainly not least is one of the OG Pete's Picks, which is Onnit Alpha Brain. Alpha Brain has absolutely revolutionized how I am a creative person and how I get my work done. And if you do something that involves your noodle, your brain, your thoughts, your memory, your focus, I promise, or I'll speak for me, Alpha Brain has made my access to my own brain, my own thoughts, my own creativity, my focus, and my concentration so much more natural, effortless, and easy. It is not a stimulant. It's not caffeine. It doesn't get you jacked up. In fact, I like to take it often before I go to bed because it gives me very vivid and interesting dreams, which I also love. But if you take it during the day, it's not going to give you dreams. You're just going to be able to focus and get into that flow state that much easier. I have Alpha Brain in my car. I have it in all of my travel bags. I often have it in the pockets of all of my jackets. I've had fans come up to me and ask me for Alpha Brain, and I've taken it out of my jacket pocket. That's how much I love it. And if you're doing something that involves your brain, if you're a student, if you're a creative type, or honestly, Val and I just had a wedding anniversary. I took a couple Alpha Brain before our date just because I wanted to have access to my thoughts, to my memories, to be focused, to be present, to be locked in. Alpha Brain is a huge game changer. If you like it 1/10 as much as I do, you're going to shit your pants. And I promise, well, for me, it's helped me get my work done. If I don't take it, I absolutely notice the difference. It is a huge secret weapon, earth-grown ingredients, game changer. Best way to see if you like it is to give it a try, and you'll be showing your support of the show. Go to Onnit, onnit.com/weird, and you will get 10% off everything you see on that landing page. That's onnit.com/weird. You'll get 10% off everything on that landing page and show your support of the show and support your brain. Support your clarity and your memory. Okay, this intro's over. So glad I got to finally sit down with Bob Crawford from the Avett Brothers. Get into it.
You look great. Look at you. You're all
Thank you.
like I'm all sweaty, and you have a You have an upright bass behind you. And who is that? Is that Merlin? Who's that?
Is that a Merlin? Do you know who that is?
Do you have an original Merlin behind you?
St. Jude. That is St. Jude.
St. Jude. I don't know much about St. Jude.
That is the actual photograph of St. Jude from before he was killed by arrows.
I don't know how to break this to you. That is not a photograph. That's not a photograph. Of
Maybe
St.
it's a daguerreotype.
What is a daguerreotype?
It is the earliest photographs. There is one of John. There's one of John Quincy Adams. It's the first president to be photographed was John Quincy Adams, and it's I think actually a daguerreotype is the method. Is the name of the guy who did it?
Would they project the image through a lens and then paint it?
No. This is a photograph.
I've heard of that. It's really on
look it up.
photographic
I will send it to you. Yes, it's out there. I have it in a book on the shelf that you can't see because
I don't. Oh,
it's on that shelf right there. Right there.
You want to show off those built-ins? See, you got a nice little setup going. I love it. Well, thanks for taking the time, man. Why St. Jude? Let's. It's funny. Like I do feel like I have to be like, so Bob, how'd you get into Avett and all that stuff? But like, I'm really excited to talk to you because we have so many shared interests. But I feel like we have to like hook them a little bit. The listeners, the people joining us right now, and be like, Bob's he's in the Avett Brothers, everybody, and that's why we're going to listen to the rest of our God talk and our discussion on all of that theology and good stuff. But I want to give a little bit. But before we'll jump ahead, why St. Jude?
Oh, because my daughter is a patient at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Yes. She has had 3 brain tumors. A brain tumor at 22 months old. And 2 recurrences, her last being September of 2020, which it was like the most 2020 thing that happened in 2020 to us.
Yes,
was our daughter having a 7-year remission of brain tumors, which you don't get a 7-year remission.
You mean that's unusual to come back after 7 years that?
I think it's unusual. Well, these are all rare and deadly, of course, and but once you get 5 years, that's a pretty good place to be. And so hers is really super rare. And I mean, so rare that, she was diagnosed with 1 tumor, and I can go into the names of them, but it'll just make people more confused. But so she was diagnosed with 1 brain tumor here in North Carolina, rare, deadly. We did second opinion at Dana-Farber in Boston and St. Jude. And they said, no, it's actually an astrocytoma glioma, rare and deadly. But so we went to St. Jude, and it was literally on a wing and a prayer because at our home, the UNC Chapel Hill, they said, there's really nothing you can do. We can pull up some chemo protocol off the shelf, and maybe that'll give you some time. But there's we're talking about quality of life here, not survival. Wow. And so this is in August, we got to St. Jude October of 2011. She was diagnosed August 28th of 2011. And so we arrive at St. Jude with no hope, but the hope of St. Jude, who is the patron saint of the hopeless cause. And so
that's why, because I knew St. Jude was the cancer hospital, obviously, but I didn't know why. For the hopeless.
I can go into the history of the hospital that involves entertainer Danny Thomas, if you'd like, or we can skip over that. But I will give you because this is pertinent. Danny Thomas, who was, other than being, in addition to being a great comedian and singer and entertainer, back in that, he wasn't in the Rat Pack, but back in that era,
the crooning times.
The crooning times. He had the Danny Thomas sitcom, and he also became a great producer and produced and created the Andy Griffith Show, among many other great classic sitcoms. So anyway, Danny Thomas was a struggling entertainer, and his daughter Marlo Thomas had just been born, and he was in Detroit, and he had $15 to his name. And down on his luck, he goes into the St. Jude Cathedral and prays to St. Jude and lights a candle, says, if you give me a break, you give me my big break, you give me just a chance, something to hold on to here, I will do something great in your name to honor you. And he put 8 of his $15 in the prayer bucket. And next day he got a radio ad. And from voicing a radio ad, and then he got another gig, and then he got another gig. So years go by. He's very successful, very famous. And Cardinal Stritch, who was the Archbishop of the Cardinal for Chicago, said to him one day,
Cardinal Stritch?
I think it was
we got to do something about that name.
Archbishop or Stritch. It was Stritch. I can tell you that.
Stritch that's like
Stritch is a stretch.
Hatchet.
Are you saying Stritch is a stretch?
Stritch is a stretch. I'm saying it's like Nurse Ratchet. It's like a name that you sound like you're in trouble just based on who wants to see you.
Well, he was, because he said, Danny, remember the promise you made to St. Jude. And so
how did you know about it?
Because Danny Thomas was a cat, like a very Catholic.
Like he
man.
flapped his gums and said, "I made a promise.
Yeah.
I made a promise."
Well, yeah, and he was also a Lebanese second generation. His father came over from Lebanon, and so he was second generation American. And actually, the fundraising arm of St. Jude is ALSAC, which is the American Lebanese Syrian Associated Charities, and so they decide to the good cardinal or archbishop and Danny decide to do to create a hospital for children with catastrophic illnesses, and they form this American Lebanese Syrian Associated Charities, and they go around the country and find all these successful Americans of Lebanese and Syrian descent. One of them, for example, was a man named Richard Shadiak, who was a Justice Department lawyer. And so all these guys get together and they begin to fundraise for this hospital that they're going to build in St. Jude's honor. And they don't know where to put it. And Danny and the Cardinal says, I think we have a hospital in Memphis, Tennessee that like a Catholic hospital that maybe isn't doing well. And I may not be getting all this exactly right, but basically there's a Catholic connection to a hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. And the other thing that was attractive about Memphis was that it was very poor. And so if you have a hospital for catastrophic areas and you could put it in New York, put it in Chicago, put it in LA, but if you put it in the South, it's somewhere where there's a great need. So they decide they're going to put this hospital in Memphis, and they start fundraising. And who fundraises for this thing? Elvis Presley, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., all the heavy hitters of the time. So the hospital is, I believe it opens its doors in 1962. I believe, but they groundbreak in like 59 or whatever. And so anyway, Danny Thomas, one of the greatest Americans of the 20th century, at the very least, worthy of his postage stamp. And
what I like about this story, Bob, is that, and this isn't a bit, he needed the nudge. Human beings are good, but we're better together. He made the promise. You could say like, oh yeah, but then he forgot, and then Nurse Ratchet had to say, hey, wait a minute. But that's actually what's lovely that's one of the many lovely things about that story. And even the humility to include that they weren't shy, that was part of the story. And then it became this collective thing, but it started, I guess what I'm saying is I take hope from that. I have moments, we've all thrown Hail Mary passes and had prayers where we're like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But it's when human beings get together, huge things happen, right?
Oh yeah, because we can't do it ourselves.
No. See,
no,
I mean,
can.
to clean that up showbiz wise is to make that a movie, somebody would want to remove the moment where someone said like, hey, didn't you say you were going to do something for St. Jude? You would remove that because we want Iron Man. You know what I mean? Those are our modern mythologies. We don't want And by the way, I'm not calling him broken. I'm saying we're all broken and we're all in need. And my wife Val is that for me so often. I'm an achiever, and one of the things that achievers can do is they can sometimes forget who's helping them or who's helped them along the way. And Val is very good to be like, hey, dipshit. And I'm just like, oh God, at least you recognize when you're wrong and you go like, oh yeah, we need to make that right or make that right or whatever. So I love, that's the part of the story that really stood out to me. Obviously the fact that all of these people, these great people came together. I'd love to see Elvis fundraising and be like a little less conversation, a little more donating. You know,
that's right. Like, well, there are pictures, right? There are pictures of Elvis on a stage with Danny Thomas, and
wow,
yeah, because Elvis being from Memphis as well, so it was. And St. Jude, the history of the hospital. I mean, it was at St. Jude in the 80s and 90s that childhood leukemia went from a 20% survival rate to an 80% survival rate. 80 plus now.
Wow.
So they've had the Nobel Prize winners and it went on to be, I'm sure he when he passed away, that was what he was most proud of being a part of. And there's another great aspect of St. Jude was that here you go. You're in this deep South during the time of and just after segregation. And so you would have kids who came from all over, and you would have white kids and black kids, and there was no housing at that point at St. Jude. So the hotels would say, well, they wouldn't provide housing for the black kids. And Danny Thomas said, if you don't take the black kids, I'm not going to give you the white kids here. And so he really helped to desegregate Memphis. And
it's crazy to think, even at our age, I'm like, I can't fully imagine what a big move that was. We're like, of course, and everyone will support you and everyone will cheer. And it's like, no, when he said that, a lot of like whoever it is, whether it be probably people not associated with the hospital, but probably some people even associated with the hospital were like, no, that's insane. That's insane. So he was, I'm trying to bolster that move. It wasn't as easy. You or I would be like, we need these, all the people. And now everyone would cheer, thankfully. More people would cheer. But back then, the majority was actually like, what are you, nuts? Like,
exactly.
Which is thankfully hard to get my mind around.
It's never it always seems inevitable, right? Like today, the day that we're speaking is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And, I've heard this 100 times today, but it's just like, it was inevitable, right? That the Allies were going to win the war and Hitler would be defeated and the world would be made safe for democracy. And for at least that 70 years that we had it. But that wasn't inevitable.
Of course it wasn't. This is what I'm saying. That's the removing of Cardinal Stritch. Or what was it?
Stritch.
What was it again? Stritch.
You're going to make me look all this up too, buddy.
We remove the Stritch from the stories. We want just inevitable victory, but no story is certainly no story worth telling. No. But no human story is going to be that clean. Of course, everybody was nervous about D-Day. Are you crazy? Of course. Yes. But we look back and we give it a nice glossy shine. So that's why St. Jude. Man, I do want to just jump into it because I love talking about this stuff. I'm a parent. First of all, thank you for telling that story. Of course, I know it from the movie. I watched you guys on CNN, so I've heard you tell it a couple times. Obviously, it's so weird. Actually, that would be interesting to talk about. It's like it's become a thing that you talk about. And that has to be strange, right? I mean, there are certain experiences in life that even though they're unwanted, they have a certain sacred or unspeakable, let's say unspeakable quality. But then it becomes like, what service is Bob to the world? What service is your family's story to the world if you don't talk about it? But was it hard to kind of get over that hurdle of like, I have to imagine when your wife finds your baby having a seizure, that's like the last thing on your mind is like, I'm going to get good at recalling this and even breaking it down into beats and even having an awareness of like, how much is too much? Like I need to, don't forget to close on hope, Bob. People don't want you on CNN not closing on hope.
Yeah.
So there's like a cultural cancer talk dance that we do. Would you talk a little bit about that? Because it's beautiful what you're doing.
Sure.
But I'd love to know how you've transitioned into surviving that to guy who now talks about it. It's almost like what happened, and then there's the way we talk about it, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, let me just say, for all the hope that there is, and there's a lot of hope. And if it wasn't hope, and if it wasn't hope, it wasn't faith, I couldn't go on. I couldn't talk to you right now. I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. You know, my life would be just a dark and gloomy place. You know, and it's hard, but there is hope, and there's joy in the pain and the sorrow, and we'll get to that.
That's all. You know, as you said that, sorry for lighting up, but I'm like, buddy. So many people. This is it. This is what we're talking about. And too much of life has become texting or social media or movies or just talking about pants. And that's one of the main reasons I'm excited to talk to you, where you find that hope, where you find that faith, and finding the joy in the suffering. And also when it's not joyful too, like all of it. You know what I mean? So please consider this your safe space, because I really believe I need to hear it as well. So, and I'm here for you too. You are not burdened with reminding us all that there's hope. I am here for you as well. So don't feel like you have to push it up the hill. But we're talking about it and go wherever you were going just then. Yeah.
So, well, you know, you mentioned it. My daughter was, for those that don't know, the band was coming home from a European tour. It was our most successful for us, you know, our most 3.5 weeks in Europe. And it was really successful for us. And we were on cloud nine, and the plane lands in Charlotte, North Carolina from Germany. I turn on my phone, really excited because my son was just born 2 months before that. And I've been gone for almost half my son's life, like at that point. And,
those are unfair fractions. Don't beat yourself up with those fractions.
And
you know,
but my daughter was 22 months old, and turn on the phone, and my wife's like, "Honey, Hallie, you know, she's in the hospital. She's like," and my wife was just so poised and, you know, crying and struggling, but just like, this woman had just experienced the most traumatic moment of her life. And, you know, she went to get Hallie out of the crib. She's having a seizure. She's doing this thing called posturing, where her arms are stretched out and her hands are balled into fists. Her left eye is moving. She was essentially having a stroke. Like, she was having seizures, and she was probably having a stroke because she had several strokes that day. And so my wife gets her downstairs. She calls 911. 911 comes. They go to the hospital. All this time, I'm in the plane. I'm completely unaware. Get to the hospital. They intubate her while she's awake. So my daughter lets out a scream while they're putting the ventilator down her throat. And my wife, for the moment, was like, "Thank God she's alive." Like, just that was a sign that Hallie was still alive. They do imaging. They find a mass in her brain that was a quarter of the size of her brain at that time. At that age, as you will probably remember, our skulls are soft until about that time is when they begin to harden. So she essentially had this mass in her head, this tumor, and it was allowed to grow larger and larger and move things out of the way. Like, it had moved her the right side of her brain into the left side of her brain because of the softness of the skull. So
wow. Yeah.
So that's probably why this was the moment that it presented itself. She'd vomited a little bit a couple days before, but, you know, you call the pediatrician and it's like, oh, kids do this thing, and then she came around. You know, the night before she was actually doing better. They went to get ice cream and things seemed, she was on the floor coloring. You know, things seemed to be moving in the right direction. So they get to the hospital. Hallie needs to go into surgery. It's emergency surgery. We don't know what's going on yet. And this is pretty much when I call. And so she's trying to explain this thing to me. And
can you talk? Sorry, Bob. Yeah. Tell me a little. What was you talked to your wife about this moment?
Yeah.
How was she anchoring herself? Was it shock? Did she have to?
She was worried about me. She was worried about because she knows me. And I'm a mess.
I'm sorry. I mean, of all the things,
yeah, I'm
fighting tears this whole time, but there's something beautiful and human about that. By the way, you and I both know by rights she could have been freaking out. That would have been okay, but
and she was, in her human way,
Yes, please, nobody misunderstand that she was calm.
No, she was,
but she was
poised in the face
able to think of that. That's a heroic love right there. That's really beautiful.
She had called our manager and had him meet me at the airport because she knew I couldn't drive the 2 hours. Once I got this information, she knew I would be unable to physically drive myself the 2 hours from Charlotte to Chapel Hill.
So Dolph came and got you.
Yeah. And so what the craziest thing is, Scott and I, we had on the way, we had upgraded ourselves to first class. The band were all Joe Kwan and Seth, they're all in coach, and Scott and I are like, hey, let's just treat ourselves here. So we upgraded ourselves at the last minute. So he and I flew back in first class and just had the loveliest conversations and talked about music and it was, and our kids, because his son, he had, his daughter Eleanor, and then his son Max is only 2 months older than my son. And so we were both, so excited to come home to our young families, and we were going to work with Rick Rubin, and we had been working with Rick Rubin. The future, at that moment was bright. It was just really bright.
Can I just say, sorry to interject, but it's it's almost fitting, meaning it's you're flying, you're dealing with what we are normally dealing with, things like airplane seats, things like first class upgrades and good conversations and stuff. And I feel like we're all on this tightrope all of the time. And this is some of the relief I want to give. We all know that we're skating in a mystery. God makes plans, man makes plans, God laughs, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. We all know that, Bob. And even though we're both fighting tears right now, I'm I think it's a gift to talk about this. Something about the European tour went well. The flight got upgraded. It rings cosmically true that there's so many stories, not just your story, so many stories that are talk to people on deathbeds that are just why are you so stressed out? Or why are you mad at your cousin? Because they are awoken to the potentials of all the infinite possibilities. And there's something cinematic about what's happening. I'm not excited about it. I'm just saying
it's coming for us all.
Yes, that's it. That's right.
We are in the earliest days of this. We had a doctor I'll just say that. And she said, you don't get through life without something like this happening. And then we would have older people come, like Scott and Seth's parents came to the hospital and to see us. And they said, I remember Jim saying, this is what older people experience this, not people your age. This is, you get older, you see tragedy, you experience tragedy. It comes close, maybe,
that's right.
Your parents pass and, you see stuff, you live, you see stuff. But for us at that age, though I was 40, but I mean, that wasn't the being at your 22 months old bedside, when she's clinging to life isn't typical.
Right.
So the plane lands, I call my wife, she does her best to explain what's going on. And I'm, my heart's dropped and I'm having a panic attack or something. I'm in shock. And at the moment, Scott's like, what's going on? What's going on? I'm trying to explain it to him. And then the TSA or whoever stormed the plane because there was a threat on the plane. And they're just you remember that you have the guards on the plane after 9/11. They start putting those guys on the plane.
The marshals.
And there's you got to get out of the plane. You got to get out of the plane. So I'm trying to explain Scott what's, going on. I can barely move. He's literally, guiding me like I'm a 90-year-old crossing a street, off of the plane. I explained it enough to him, and he literally guides me through customs and explains to them, gives them my passport and says, this guy just got some really bad news. And like literally Scott got me through customs. And then I get through, and I guess the word had gotten out because I see our band members, and I guess Dolph told them something was really going. Hallie was in the hospital and it was not good. And I could just see this worried, like this distance. After this happened, no matter how close I was with anybody, Scott and Seth, anybody, like there is a gap, right? There's just a distance because you've experienced this, Go ahead.
No. Yeah, you're empathetic. No, you're telling this beautiful story. I'm just saying that's what I'm saying. These moments where Scott merges with you.
Yeah.
It's this thing. And again, Papa, I hate this story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
this story, it's a horrible story. And there's these weird, he wouldn't have grabbed you like that, literally carrying, not, I don't mean carrying
you can.
And there's your band, and you can finish what you were saying. It sounds like your hearts shatter open. It's like Leonard Cohen, the cracks are how the light gets in, right?
Right, yeah.
Suddenly, why do we have the deathbed, I love you, Dad scenes? It's because the sledgehammer, how are you going to say it, removes the distance, right?
Right. Yeah. And so, and then I see Dolph, and then this is the most beautiful, one of the many, because you're right, like the light gets in the cracks, and my wife and I, we were crushed, but the kindness that we experienced, over the course of this is just far and wide and deep. And one of the first earliest acts, besides Dolph coming to take me, was Scott getting in the car with us. And he had not seen his family in over 3 weeks. And without thinking or thinking like, this guy needs me, I don't know, he got in the car, he went to Chapel Hill with us. And Dolph had brought a friend to drive my car to, home for me all that way, 2.5 hours. So it's me, Scott, and Dolph in Dolph's car driving to Chapel Hill. And then Dolph's friend Brian driving my car, following behind, and just this really, and it was orchestrated by my wife.
No.
And because she didn't know what to do, so she called Dolph, and Dolph was like, I'll do whatever you need me to do, and it's just incredible. So we get to the hospital, and we go in the emergency. They told us to come in the emergency exit, and on the way, Melanie, we had another couple conversations, and it kind of felt like she wasn't going to make it. You know what I'm saying? It just seemed like, we didn't know what was happening. She was in surgery. This whole time she's in surgery. And so we get there, and this someone who works at an administrator at the hospital guides Scott and I up this back elevator as Dolph's parking the vehicle, and we go up to the.
Sorry, Bob. Just one detail. Are you locked up? Completely locked up at this, or are the emotions coming?
Yeah.
I mean,
I was
at this point. I'm like somebody's got to hold Bob. Someone has to.
Well, there were times where I was
touching him.
So calm on the car ride that I was mad at myself for being so calm. Like I was like, why are you? I didn't feel anything. I was numb. Like this is like people say I was numb. I would say, but then I would be just a mess.
Yeah.
It's just really weird. When I saw my wife, it flowed. And I saw her family was there. And these people our friends people had gathered at the PICU waiting room, and Hallie's in surgery, and the people we love are there. And my wife and I embrace, and we look each other in the eye, and it's like this moment of like, yeah, we're we're doing this. Like we're in this and we're doing this.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, and it was this affirming,
go ahead.
Yeah.
Affirming.
No, it was just very affirming. Like I know, like she would have to tell you her side of it, but for me, it was like we were the only two people in the world, who were experiencing this, and we had each other.
I wonder, if I find sometimes in moments of high stress, and I'm not going to clear my throat. People, when they talk to you, you must hear constantly, not to compare to you, or all that sort of like grief, of PP measuring.
The suffering Olympics, we call it.
The suffering. I'm not even talking about a specific moment. I'm just relating to you that sometimes it's freeze. You kind of go into that fight flight, and sometimes there's like a numbness and out of bodiness.
Sure.
And I wonder, like moments in my parenting, I've felt where Leela had a lot of UTIs when she was a baby, and there were moments where Val, we're new parents, and she's just going like, I think something's like really, really wrong, and for some reason, I would just be completely like, this is okay. We will go to the hospital. And I said to Val later, I was like, I feel like if she was calm, I would have freaked out, but it like balances. It's like one of us at a time.
I'm the freak out. You're
the freak out.
I am the freak out king to this day.
Tell me.
Maybe it's gotten better. I don't know. I hope she walks in. You can ask her, but she's like, has gotten to be, because obviously we have, Hallie will be 13. I don't want to like skip over to like the happy thing, but she was 22 months old when this journey began, and she's here, man. She's here. Yeah. November 1st, she'll be 13.
Wow.
So she's has multiple disabilities and this, and so we've had a rough ride with her, but we know the joy, right? But still, to this day, like my wife's like, watch. She like, I'm like, what's going on? What do you think's going on? What do you think's happening? You think she's okay? And my wife's like, I'm watching. She's more, let's observe and let's kind of like gather the data.
Interesting.
And then, but I'm
both.
I'm calling the doctor.
Both are needed though.
Yeah.
I'm the one who won't call the doctor necessarily. Obviously, we have your limit, but I'll be the one that's like, I'm sure it's fine. Let me just walk around with her. I'll be calm. That'll calm her down and all that sort of stuff. But you need Val. Leela needed a cath. Like she needed the thing.
Yeah. So
it takes both. So I'm just celebrating Bob. Obviously, we're celebrating your wife too, but it's those two energies that balance one another. So I love. Obviously, again, I have to say I'm excited by the love and the compassion in the story, and I'm saddened by everything else. But the moment of and the detail of looking in each other's eyes, I have to think almost like a car crash. It has to be you're nowhere else in the world. Right? I mean, you're not thinking about.
Oh, you're present.
You're present, and I'm not saying that's a silver lining. I'm saying that has to make it a peak experience. Well, it has to be, yeah.
Well, I go to therapy. Like I see a therapist, right? And not every week. I probably should. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get to the point where, oh, I'm good, and then you don't see the therapist, and then like everything goes down. You're like. You call the therapist. Hey,
that's how I am with meditating.
What's up? Right?
I'm currently not meditating, and I'm like, something's wrong, and I'm like, Pete, how many times you need to rediscover that you need to be meditating?
Maintenance
or therapy, maintenance. Yes,
yeah, and it's like me looking at my Bible. For me, like as far as like reading either reading scripture or reading, a thinker. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like when you're not nourishing
something that feeds you.
Yeah, you need to nourish it. But oh man, I just lost
we're talking about
about being present.
Yeah.
Right. So I saw her a couple of weeks ago and I said, it's all about being present, isn't it? And my wife would be like, I've been telling you that for 16 years.
At least your therapist is a woman, and then you can't be like, now that a man told you.
When I think about the worst things that could happen. Not just to my daughter, but to my daughter frequently, I think about the bad outcomes. And then I think about bad outcomes for my son. I think about bad outcomes for myself, for all of us. And that's like, that is not being present. And it's like, because even when we're getting to this, like getting back to what happened with Hallie in that moment in the hospital, it's like when the really bad things happen, they pretty much don't happen all at once. All the bad feelings you have, it doesn't all happen at once. And when you're present to it, it's more digestible. As awful as it is, you're living it, you're greeting the moment by moment by moment, and you're getting through it because you're actually living it and experiencing it.
Have you heard? Of course, anxiety is paying interest on a debt that isn't yours. Is a quote that I love.
My wife says, borrowing trouble.
Borrowing trouble.
Yeah.
I've also heard praying for something you don't want.
Right.
That one's a little superstitious adjacent. I don't think that's how it works. That if you worry, then it's going to happen.
I do that all the time. Like my negative thoughts and my anxiety will not put a brain tumor in my daughter's head.
That's right. And it won't crash your car. And there's something, that's why I don't love that one.
It might make me play a bad bass note.
I will say it does work in the small term for sure. If I went into this conversation and was like, I will say before we start this is going to be great. We are both going to love this. This is going to, this is their favorite episode, that sort of stuff, because it does help in the short term. But I don't think I can, I don't even want to say the examples of, break your window or whatever. That's not how it works. But I do think it's interesting. I think it's brilliant what you're saying. Is that when we're suffering, one of the ways to relieve it is ask yourself, what are you suffering for? And often for me, and for I think a lot of people, it's something that you're forecasting into the future that hasn't happened and probably won't happen, even if it's likely. Let me put it this way. Val and I have been saying lately, what's the problem right now? And so many of us, Bob, not just you're dealing with the capital letter tragedy things, but in most things, our brain, I actually think it gets a perverse pleasure. You're a Bible person. I think obsessive thinking, dwelling, inability to let go of a fantasy, these are like demon possessions. These are possessions.
Sure.
And they rob you without a doubt.
It happens to me all the time. I get, and if I'm exhausted and you're on the road for a while or hangry, right?
Yeah.
I am more susceptible to it. Little things will happen. I mean, I did it on the road this weekend with Scott, and I was like, Scott, this is kind of bothering me right now. It's just like, that's just, I've reached that moment. Yeah. And it's just, these things, it's always lurking if you're not nourishing yourself in the right ways.
Buddy, I was just talking about this because I'm seeing a physical trainer. I can't wait to tell people that's not true. But we were
that
talking
you're
about
seeing a trainer, or that you can't wait to tell people?
It's just embarrassing that I can't. I can't wait to tell people that I'm seeing a physical trainer. But we were just today talking about this podcast, and I was explaining a little bit about what it's about, and cleaning up before you wake up. And have you heard that expression?
No.
Like some people just want to jump to the spiritual. Okay, Bob and Peter talking about being present. Bob and Peter talking about when you're suffering, sometimes you're suffering an imagined future, or your imagined future is making your present moment way worse.
That's right.
Even in 10 out of 10 nightmare suffering, you can slow down and drop anchor into the present and deal with it. And that's biblical too. The concept of God not giving you more than you can handle.
That's right.
Well, you might build out, but if you slow down, but how do you do that? Often, I think the fact that you're in a good relationship, for example, the fact that you're creatively fulfilled, the fact that you live in North Carolina, that's no small thing, that you've decided to live in a beautiful nature place, right? Yeah. That you have so much to be grateful for. The fact that you're meeting your needs, the fact that you have, what were the things that kept coming up in that story? Dolph, Scott, Seth, family, that's cleaning up. like before we jump to like, you can handle anything if you break it down into the moment. Sure. But that's going to make a lot more sense when you have your game a little tighter, like just your psychological game, your social game, even your professional creative game. That's been one of the big breakthroughs for this. And then also on a small scale, maybe you need a piece of pizza. Like maybe you're freaking out, like maybe you need to regulate. Maybe someone needs to hug you. Maybe you need a weighted blanket. Maybe you need to sit down. Maybe you need to shut your eyes. Like that's all cleaning up.
I love my weighted blanket.
Buddy, get real. I'm under it. As soon as Leela goes down, Daddy's under that weighted blanket. Because that's why in this story I kept going, who's holding you? Who's touching you? Like that shit matters. And you want to talk about distance between us, like we've had dinner before, you and I, and run into each other, but we do the human thing. We do the first class coach thing. We do the how's your tour thing. And as you're telling me this story, my heart starts to crack open and you just want to, we're on a fucking space rock and hold each other. And we're in these beautiful but delicate I don't want to say meat suits. That's too crude, but we're in these bodies. And whoa, the fact that any of us are fighting or arguing or mean
ridiculous
or cruel or petty, it's a joke. It's a bad joke.
We need to be united in our suffering. Like imagine running for office and being like, look, I've been through some stuff. I know you've been through some stuff. Why can't we just be united in all the awful stuff we've experienced in our lives?
Yeah.
Because I've lost, a parent, and I have a daughter who has had cancer 3 times, and we deal with all. And then I have her brother who needs care as well, and we're just trying to figure this thing out. And man, what's going on in your life? Like did you lose your job? Are you divorced? Like. Do
Bobby,
you have a disease?
Bobby,
yeah.
This. I'm not even interrupting. It's like church. I just want to say this. Instead of doing what we do, which is hiding our suffering and acting like it's an error, I'm all for, that might be getting too ahead of ourselves. It's like, it's a bridge. That's the kind of person I am. It's like, show me yours. Show me your suffering. I'll show you my suffering. There's a Mary Oliver poem where she says that. It's like, I believe it's Wild Geese. It is Wild Geese. And that is not the thing to turn away from. It's the glue. It's the closeness. I heard you say in another interview, it removes that last bit of daylight between you and your brothers in the band.
Yeah.
That's a great
forged together by the fire, that we experience, but we're divided by all as I've been doing a lot of reading and studying about the Concert for Bangladesh, and George Harrison would say that the tidal wave of bullshit, and we are all just like caught, beneath the tidal wave of bullshit, when the truth is that the things that unite us are, and it's become such a cliche, but the things that unite us are greater and more important than the things that divide us.
And messier and stickier and uglier and embarrassed. And that's why I was like, how were you in the car? Because I people grieving, people in shock, people
Pete, for weeks, out. I just would sob. I just sobbed. And every chaplain that would walk in, I'd be like, let's pray. Every person would like, let's pray with me. And I would, my wife's, I don't want to get ahead here. Let me just tell you this. This is the important thing. After my wife and I, at that moment, we look in each other's eyes, and all these family and friends had gathered to be with us in our moment of suffering, and they're all worried about Hallie. And I walk in the waiting room, and without thinking, and I wasn't this guy before this moment, I said, can we pray? And we all held hands, and I prayed to Jesus Christ. And that was like, I was raised Catholic, and, but when I my later teenage years, I, was like, oh, I'm Buddhist, man, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm like, let me make a religion that gives me the lifestyle that I would like to live. And I can just make let me make my own, like, let me take this from here and this from here, whatever. But this was like my moment of coming to faith. And it was almost like there's that famous Abraham Lincoln quote that I'll probably butcher and it may be apocryphal, but he said, I found myself on my knees many times because I had nowhere else to go. And it was just this moment of something deep inside of me wanted to pray to God and needed God and needs God. And so from there on out, we were early. Hallie was, it was kind of the thing where, okay, so the surgeon after, and this is like probably 2 hours after that. So she's probably in surgery for 6 to 8 hours. And we get, led down this, like, I always say it was like a Kubrick-esque hallway, in the hospital to a darkened prep room, like on Monday morning this was a Sunday night. So it was like, some couple fluorescent lights on. The rest of it was completely dark. A lot of bays where you have like the curtains that would be drawn, but they were all the curtains were open. There were very few gurneys in there. And it was like just a big empty room, half lit, big empty room. And the surgeon, pulled up a chair and had us sit down and I, he's like, so I cut into her head and all this stuff started coming out and it was a tumor, really syrupy tumor, and it was I think I got 90% of it, but she had strokes, and of course I said, is she going to make it? Like that thing you learn from watching hospital dramas your whole life, yeah. And he said, I don't know. He said, I don't know. And so it became evident, in fact, the next day, here she is now she's sedated, she's on fentanyl and everything else. And she's her head's covered and her face is covered and she's intubated. She's got the ventilator in and he comes by like 4 o'clock the next afternoon, before he's about to leave. And he said, if you told me this time yesterday we'd be here, I'd say, okay, it's good. This is a good place to be right now with this. Yeah. But it became, and then as the pathology came in and it was like this, they thought it was an ependymoma, with a high-grade ependymoma. And it's just a really deadly brain tumor that keeps coming back, just keeps coming back. And we know children who've passed from these tumors. And at that point it was like, well, if she survives the trauma of the strokes and the traumatic brain injury she suffered when she came in here, she probably won't survive the cancer. So it got to the point where we were like, man, let's get through this part so we can fight the cancer. Like fighting the cancer seemed like a good goal.
The reward, yeah. The manageable thing. Yeah. The structure, that was our life became so unstructured. And like any sense of routine or cohesion was ripped away from us, right? Mm-hmm. That the idea of going through chemo or radiation, that was a routine. Yeah. It's like a war instead of, I'm not trying to be funny, but like, it's almost like Frogger. It's like you get hit by something coming or a war. Like a war, right. Now we can have a situation room, we can plan in this, we can that, strategize, talk to different experts, not just crossing a crazy highway. Yeah. Right.
And so every hour, it came to breaking down the days to hours to minutes. And my wife's old boss brought their very Catholic family, and he and his wife brought us these like Catholic prayer books, right? And the Avett's sister, Bonnie, who now plays piano with us in the band, her husband, Nick Reaney, gave me his grandfather's rosary. And he said that in a little note in there, and it said that his grandfather was this like big, strong Italian guy, and he was afraid of flying. And one time in his life, he was on a plane sitting next to a nun, and she gave him these rosaries, and he was never afraid again. And so, So I began to pray the rosary like 4 times a day.
Which one? Which prayer?
Well, if you go through the book, there's like the hours. It's like the hours, right? So it's the part of the liturgy. You go through the weeks. It's like the different sufferings of Jesus. The different, what do they call them? But so it's like
Passions?
cycles. No, the passion is like the walk to his death.
Yeah.
But they are called. Can we get research on this? But so you'll pray you'll pray the finding him in the temple. Like that's one scene. The Immaculate Conception is another one where Mary meets with Anna, John the Baptist's mother, Saint Anne. Anyway,
that sounds extra biblical to me. Is that in the Bible?
Are you saying it's apocryphal? No, it's not. It is not in the Bible.
It is not in the Bible. You're saying it is in the Bible.
It is in the Bible. Yes. It's in Luke. With John the Baptist. There was a connection between John the Baptist's mother and Mary. And John the Baptist's mother was much older. And they both got pregnant roughly around the same time.
Okay.
And, yeah.
It's I think about this. It's like no atheists in foxholes, obviously, right?
Right.
Abraham Lincoln, now Bob Crawford. You're in the situation where, to use your words, kind of, if I was in that situation, I would be throwing up wholehearted, old school, dear Jesus, or Heavenly Father, or in Jesus' name, amen, all these different things. That's what you do. That's what you have to do, right? I mean, there's no just floating around being like, reality is a mystery. You go straight to mercy. You go straight to petitioning and pleading, right?
Right.
After all this, I'm wondering what your relationship to prayer is now. I know there are studies that prayer helps. There's like blind studies. Have you heard about these where you pray
I've
for
heard, but I haven't delved into them. I can tell you from my personal experience is when things are going well, it's hard to pray, right? Like the most important thing. That's a bit
of a chestnut right there. Yeah, it's true.
I talked to someone a year after all, when things kind of like, I left the band for a year and, it was just because Hallie went through treatment and I came back, and then that next year was hard, right? To be on stage celebrating and stuff. And like but you mentioned talking about pants. Like I'd be on the bus and these guys are talking about jeans, $100 jeans or whatever, $200, I don't know whatever. And I was like, at first for a while, I was like, I was so much better.
Well, you woke up, you can't go back.
Right.
You can't go back. Yeah.
But when you get some normalcy, routine, a couple good year under your belt, those $200 jeans come back. Like the desire for the comfort of existence,
and
does come back.
The privilege of being able to talk. By the way, Joe and I went to that jean place, I think. I think it's I forget where we were, but we were in North Carolina. And I have...
Oh, Raleigh Denim, not sponsored by...
Raleigh
this
Denim.
Is not sponsored by Raleigh Denim.
No, in fact, decidedly not. Fuck you, Raleigh Denim. I'm just kidding. Wonderful pants. But that is, you were craving the normalcy. It's almost like, don't let me put words in your mouth, but there's almost a jealousy. It's like, must be nice to sit around just fucking farting about jeans right now, right?
Look, asshole. My kid is blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And you're blah, blah, talking about food and dinner and restaurants and jeans.
Yeah,
what the?
Yeah.
But then, life gets, I imagine myself coming back and like wearing black all the time and just being a quiet figure, it's the habit of prayer. It's a habit, right? Like what I find now is I go through periods where my prayer life is good and I'm flexing that muscle. and I'm, nourishing myself. Just like we talked about earlier, this is the same thing with therapy. It all is.
Can I ask what you mean? It all is self-care,
maintenance.
Maintenance.
If you're not flexing the prayer muscle, if it's not right. Like if you're a person of any faith, prayer shouldn't be a wish list, right?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. We need a definition of terms here. When you're praying, is it more contemplative? Is it more silent? Is it more dropping just moment? Tell me what prayer is for you.
Okay. So a good friend of mine who's a pastor, he's retired pastor now. He said, sometimes like what he'll do is he'll have an index card and he'll write somebody's name on it. And he'll just think about them. Someone he's praying for, he just thinks about them for a while. And then, ask God, and thanks God for this person and ask God for this person's needs to be met. And for the greatest prayer I learned, because I would go through the waves of being, like as things would happen, how I had recurrences and I would get bitter, right? I would get really bitter. Like the jeans thing, that's a great example, or, of my exhibiting my bitterness. And he actually said to me one day when she had her first recurrence, and I was like, I loved God. I didn't like people. I couldn't deal with people, but I was really faithful to God, which I got bad news for me. That's not right. That's not how it works. Like, God created people. Like, it's almost like you're saying, well, I'm better than these people.
I think that's all, from my theological perspective, that's like saying I like the ocean, but I don't like all these fucking glasses of water sitting around me. Like the animating principle to me behind people, like who you really are from my theological perspective, is the divine indwelling. You and I are talking as Bob and Pete, and that's fun. But the way that I can love you without knowing you is because I know deep down in our core, we're the same exact thing. What else really could we be? Right. So but I struggle with people too. So if I always say, Jesus didn't say like your neighbor, he said love your neighbor. So there's lots of people you can be like, this isn't for me. But I was raised believing that, like, if you were a Christian, that meant you were to fake it. And I'm not saying it's not nice to be sweet. It is nice to be sweet. I'm saying, as Richard Rohr says, the word nice is nowhere in the New Testament. We've turned it something that's just kind of kind and social and good into the point, when really the point is for us to figure out what exactly is the animating principle behind you as you tell me this story and behind me as I listen to it. And that's where you and I can merge even without suffering, if we could have that sort of awakening. Yeah.
Yeah. I love Richard Rohr. Like we Avett people love Richard Rohr. We find great nourishment in his, in him. Yeah. Yeah. The prayer that this,
you were saying about prayer.
Well, and this is like what I pray for other people.
Yeah.
He prayed for me, and it said, he said that God meets you wherever you are, that you can just feel the presence of God wherever you are, in your bitterness or, in your pain and joy. And
of course, I think that's such a key part of the Christ story, is that he's in the garden and he's like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But if it's again, these are the moments we would whitewash or sandblast out of the story, is these moments of doubt or anger or fear. And I know people have different opinions on whether or not Jesus had those things. I tend to be in the camp that he did, that he was fully a person as well as fully divine. But that's how you and I relate over our suffering. People say that it's Jesus's imperfection, meaning his suffering, that makes him like nobody likes Superman, really. Like Superman with the bullets bouncing off. We actually respond and connect and bond way more to a broken, this is Richard Rohr, by the way, a broken, naked loser. That's what he calls Jesus. A loser by social definitions, of course.
Right.
All of his friends turn their back. The government turns their back. He's murdered. He's betrayed. This is not, but we've turned it into the faith of winners for winning people and the $100 jeans. Nothing wrong with all of us having our $100 jeans. That's fine. I'm just saying, don't confuse the message. It's not just the winner's circle. In fact, I would say one of the founding principles of the faith is what you do with suffering and what suffering means and what suffering does to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, for people, there's a lot of people out there who have problems with Christianity or the gospel, or, you know, you just got to allow for, I think people have trouble being in the mystery. Like, be in the mystery. You know, we are a very rational society. Well, we don't act rational, but we kind of like believe that we're so rational and we're so evolved that, you know, intellectually that we can believe this or not believe this, and if we don't believe, you know, whatever. I'm just like, this came up this weekend in a conversation, and it's like, there's a great song by a folk singer, Irish Dement, and it's "Let the Mystery Be." And it's go look it up, people. Like, it's very reassuring. And when you go to a Catholic mass, and look, we don't go, our family doesn't go to mass. Like, we haven't gone anywhere since COVID, but I mean, we were attending non-denominational, and that's probably where we belong. But my wife and I have and it's funny, my wife came to her Catholic affinity from the Church of Christ in North Carolina, from a completely different place. But it's like, but when you go to a Catholic mass, it's said, like, the mystery of faith, you know, like, that's a big part of it.
That's right. Well, that's a Richie Roy thing too. We've turned faith into the opposite. Faith is supposed to be your comfort level in the uncertainty, and we turned it into absolute certainty.
Pardon the interruption, weirdos. Back to the show in 60 seconds. But this show is brought to us by our friends at Trade Coffee. If you love drinking coffee every morning, like I do, like Val does, and who doesn't, you have to check out Trade Coffee. Trade makes it super easy to get the very best coffee delivered fresh from the finest local roasters around the country. Going to a coffee shop is a great experience, but it's not something most of us can do every day. So if you're looking for that delicious local coffee shop taste on a daily basis, it is much easier to do and to get it with Trade Coffee. If you've been getting your coffee from the grocery store and drinking the same coffee every day, I mean, mix it up, guys. Mix it up. It's time to try something even better with Trade. Trade Coffee makes it so easy to get fresh roasts delivered to your doorstep from local roasters around the country. They are a coffee subscription service, if you haven't put that together, that makes it so simple for you to discover new coffees and make your best cup of coffee at home every day. No fancy equipment required. Trade partners with some of the nation's top-rated independent roasters to send you coffee that they know you'll love, fresh to your home and on your preferred schedule. And you get to support small local businesses. That, my friends, is what we call a win-win. Whether you already know what you like or you're new to specialty coffee and need some help, Trade makes it easy and convenient to discover new coffees. They'll send you ground coffee or whole beans for however you make your coffee at home. So whether or not you're just getting started or you are a coffee aficionado looking to discover something new, Trade guarantees you'll love your first bag, or they'll send you a new one for free. We like to do the whole bean because we like to experiment with the different types of grind. You get the coarse for the French press or the fine. You do it different ways. But it's just so fun to know that you can introduce some novelty, some freshness, something exciting, and support local businesses while drinking the best coffee you've ever had in your life. So upgrade your coffee today with Trade Coffee and let them take the guesswork out of finding your perfect cup. Right now, Trade is offering our listeners a total of $30 off your subscription plus free shipping at drinktrade.com/weird. That's drinktrade.com/weird for $30 off your subscription to the best coffees in the country. drinktrade.com/weird. /weird. All right, everybody, let's get back to the show.
Let's pick back up here.
Yeah.
I was excited. So I just went pee. And this conversation, man, I just want to say, it just gave me one of these like pees where my feet were on the ground. Does that make sense? Like I was walking. I just meant it's making me more present. The gratitude for life and for the present and to think of beautiful things like people praying for people on note cards.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the most overwhelming thing. I've seen you guys play many times, and I'm not trying to shift to that. So let's talk about the Avett. I'm just saying one of the things that's beautiful about the Avett show is you're like, wow, every person here could be punching someone in the face, but instead they're singing and dancing and crying and pointing their awareness towards the same beautiful things. Almost
talk about a mystery like that. Like there's like for me, it's like we started out and it was, we were all much younger and, we were in a band and all this, like the young man band dreams were still in play. Of like being in a band, and it's what you always wanted to do since you were a teenager, and you're doing it, and at some point, not too far in, you had people who were our age but bringing their parents, and then those people brought their kids, and then that's when it began to, just a few years into it, it just began to occur to me like this is unusual, like in the best possible way, and there is like. Scott and Seth, they write incredible lyrics and they're beautiful and they're meaningful and people attach great meaning to them for their own lives. And that's what makes music so spiritual. Like music is the great universal language. It's the ancient, like if you imagine like hitting tapping was it a gong or a bell that just rings and it, people do all the time to clear their minds and to pray and this and that, but like it's the mystic chord of life, right? You talk about Leonard Cohen, and beyond Scott and Seth's, their intentions with all their lyrics is honest and pure and genuine. That's why the Avett Brothers, that's why the experience of coming to a show is what it is. That's why the music is what it is, because it's honest and raw and genuine. But I believe there is also a mystery associated with it. Like there's something, like church, like church.
Are you crazy? Yes.
You could go to see Bruce Springsteen and that's like church too.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's a mystery. Like why does music touch us the way it does? All of us.
Yeah. Somewhere
deep inside. This is why I believe, like there are things that confirm faith for me, right? And accepting, I accept the mystery premise. Like if you can figure it out, you haven't figured it out. Like, particularly with God and faith. Like if I told you I knew exactly the deal with God, I'm full of shit. Like I'm lying to you because
or selling me something. Probably.
I'm selling you something because I know that this is bigger than me, and I think that music is connected somewhere with all of that. That it is just amazing that someone can play, that someone who I don't speak the same language to or I can't understand can play an instrument and it can touch my soul and it can touch the soul of every person on the planet.
Yeah, that's right. But it's greater than the sum of its parts. And I don't know if you read Richard Rohr's book on the Trinity, but God is relationship itself, right? Why is it the triune God? It's because God, he says God is more of a verb than a noun, and it's built in relationship. And people who listen to this podcast know I say this all the time. So when I said, "Are you kidding me?" I just couldn't be agreeing more. That an Avett Brothers or a Springsteen show or a Green Day show can be like church in this beautiful way, where the instruments blend. First and foremost, right? The rhythm section, which is like the heartbeat, blends with the bass, which is like the roots, blends with the violin or the fiddle, which is like the spirit, and then the human voice. There's something literally in the creation story about the breath coming out, and then now ideas, which are objects that we create with our mind, are being implanted, and we're all having the same idea at the same time. So all of the members merge with their instruments. All those instruments and members become something we call a band. They put on something we call a show, and then the show merges with the audience. The audience also is individuals that merge into one thing called an audience. And the best shows, I know you know this feeling, are when the band and the audience merge into one.
Well, that's absolutely key, right? The audience sends the energy to the band receives that and sends the energy back. To the audience, and then the audience sends it back to the band. And it's this, a concert is a constant, like, because the audience, I think the audience touches, like, starts, they light the fuse, because they're there anticipating this experience that they're about to have. And then, so they're cheering because before the band comes on, and I've been in the audience, like, before I played in a band, like, going to concerts was my thing. You know, I went many concerts, and so you're so excited for the band to come on, and so you're cheering right before when the tech comes on and tunes the bass or the guitar, and that just amps up the crowd more and more and more, and then the band. So you send out the love, and then the band comes out. And then there's this, like, mutual greeting, and then the band starts playing the song, and they're sending, we hear you with the love. Here, take this, take some more of this. And then, like, that, that's how the night goes.
And that is what was a room full or a stadium full of strangers becomes an Avett Brothers concert. And that's a transformation of sorts.
I'll tell you let me say one more thing on this.
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the most amazing moment for me on stage is when we are doing a song. Well, maybe it's just, Scott or Seth doing a solo song, or maybe it's the three of us up there doing a song. And it's a very quiet song. And it's, there's, like, Miles Davis would talk about the space between the music, right? When it's that moment in the song where it's absolutely quiet, where there's a break in the music, and then the audience is absolutely quiet, hushed. And it's that moment of just, like, silence in the middle of this whole thing. Like, that is just the most incredible. Like, that's the loudest noise. It's just great. It's so powerful.
The emptiness. Yes. Because I think what a lot of us are looking for, whether we're going to see the Top Gun or going to see, you could call it, or see you guys play, you could call it escapism. That would be putting it down, I think. I think at a concert, let's say, what you're escaping is your story, which is constantly changing. So it's not the realest part of you. But in that silence, just for a moment, that which is essential to all of us and shared in all of us gets to be quiet, loud, including you guys, right? I mean, that stillness is a whole space, WHOLE. It's a whole space, right? Instead of the noise of even you and I talking right now. We're telling our stories, and maybe you relate, maybe you don't relate. But it's these moments in between where it's like, it's the white part on the page. That's where we all are.
Or Scott would say in terms of fine art and paintings, negative space.
Yeah.
The need for negative space.
That's it. So let's talk a little bit about your theology. I blabbed a little bit about the ocean and the glasses of water. That sort of leans towards my, I don't even want to talk more about mine. I'm interested in where you are in that faith. And we've talked a little bit about how suffering ignited it, how suffering enriches it, how, here's another Richard Rohr, human beings don't change unless things stop going their way. I mean, why would you change if things are going your way? He actually prays for one humiliation a day. I've sort of stagnated. I haven't been reading my spiritual texts and stuff. This is going to sound like a joke. I had like a weird call with my mother this weekend, and I was like, mwah, perfect. Because it was uncomfortable. It was like this uncomfortable chat. And I hung up the phone, and I was reading about suffering, and I had something to latch into. I had a feeling that could, you said light the fuse on the idea. Otherwise, it's just sort of and God said the thought, but when we're hurting, it kind of makes it stickier.
We're
but I'd
ready.
love to know everything.
Right.
It makes us ready.
We're like, we got the ears on. Like
it humbles us. It opens us, right? We got the ears on is beautiful. I love that. So why don't you tell me just a little bit about it? What are some of the things, the mystery of it? When I went PP, I was going to tell you, God is the name of the blanket we put over the mystery to give it shape, which is one of my favorite quotes, that it's not about certainty. That's what the ego wants. I want to know what God is so that I can tell you that you're wrong and we're right and we're in and you're out and all that sort of stuff. That's an ego trip. But when I say that God, the reason I believe in God, hold on to God, you play with God, is because God as an idea, as a symbol, as a metaphor, is my way of participating with the mystery. It's my way of giving it a shape with the blanket.
right.
So let's start there. Old man in the sky. Fine, if you do have an old man in the sky, tell me the images, tell me the quotes, tell me the ways that you land on this thing that is so nebulous that so many people just turn away from it.
Yeah. Well, I think that the ultimate, right? Like I think when I pass, I'll just jump right to, cloud world where you're playing ping pong table with your grandfather who looks exactly like he looked the day he passed away.
Yeah.
I do love that idea. I do love that idea. But I think it's you go to God because you become united with that energy.
Yeah.
You become united but it feels like that. Like it feels like all the love that you've felt in your life and everyone that you've loved and all the people that loved you, you do see them because you're all merged.
Right. Yeah. No, I like that. The more I study and even the further out things I do, the more I'm like, the traditional understanding of heaven, ping pong with your grandpa. George Harrison
He looks
said this.
exactly like he looked
Well,
the day he died.
I would take issue with that being literally true.
I'm saying, but like that's what you kind of think at one point. That's what I thought at one point.
No, of course. But George Harrison says this too in the documentary, the 2-part documentary. He's like, the further you go, you start this journey away from Old Man in the Sky, ping pong with grandpa who looks exactly like he did. And then by the time you're through the journey, you've come full circle and realized that all of it is true and all of it is not true. Meaning, from my perspective, the afterlife, heaven, the merging into the essence of all potential means the essence of all potential, meaning that too, meaning that too, meaning that too. I've even had some psychedelic experiences where I'm like, were you, Bob, there? No, but yes, you were there. It's like Dorothy waking up. You were a part of that because I went into the all. Everything was there. Every cat's whisker that's ever been born was there. And at the same time, did I see a single cat? No, not literally, but the metaphor of Cloud City, every cat, and Bob's there works pretty good for our limited, constricted brain.
Yeah, well, and as I don't know if Harrison said this in the documentary that you're referring to, but I believe on YouTube there's a 1997 interview on VH1, and I can't believe it's on VH1 because he is just talking some serious truth, and he says, we're playing roles. Like, right now you're whoever and I'm George and you're whoever, but we're all just the same. We're all, just right now at this moment, these are our masks and these are the roles we're playing. And
that's right.
My personal, talk about Richard Rohr, a lecture, and I don't think it's a book, it's a lecture that has been really important to me is True Self, False Self.
Okay, so you're the first guest to bring it up before I did. I've listened to True Self, False Self all the way through 3 times. I'm obsessed with it. I always go back to it when I'm feeling off.
And it is like that. Yeah. Like James Finley, who is in New Mexico with the center.
Okay. for action and contemplation.
And Scott told me, he said this. He said that you should just really need to read one book. If you have a book that speaks to you, just read that one over and over again. And that's kind of like, it's good to go back to that on a yearly basis. True Self, False Self.
I agree. I feel that way about that one and Power of Now. But yes, absolutely. You mean, but it's an audio. It's for people interested. It's on
Audible.
iTunes.
Yeah.
It's also on Audible. Okay.
I believe that's where I have it.
Okay.
And it seems to be a lecture, like a weekend retreat.
It is. Yeah. It's not a book. Yeah.
And the deeper you get, you read some Richard Rohr books, then you realize that, he's talking about Thomas Merton. Like he's really connected to what Thomas Merton was thinking and his thinking. So then, you listen, there's great lectures Thomas Merton taught at Gethsemane, which is a monastery, I guess, in Kentucky. And you can, on Audible as well, you can find he's teaching the young, what do you call them, abbots, monks? I don't know.
Wait, there's audio of him teaching?
Oh, a lot of them. Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. He's got
photographs of presidents and Merton teaching. I did not know that.
Yes. So they're really great. But
sorry.
No, just by far. And if you said, well, what is and I like, yeah, man, he's getting a hard time on Twitter, this guy, Tim Keller, who I love and I still love. I don't know why he gets a hard time. He gets really harassed on Twitter these days. And I don't spend too much time investigating why, because he means a lot to me. His sermons, I listen to his, and you can also on iTunes listen to his sermons. It's gospel and life. Maybe more conservative, maybe a little more traditional than Richard Rohr in a lot of ways, but intellectually, he can explain the faith to a non-believer, I think, better than anyone else.
Really? Wow.
And I found great comfort in his sermons. Great comfort.
And these are true self, false self. So the essence of true self, which we sort of hinted at with George Harrison, is that you are, for lack of a better word, and all of this is for lack of a better word, the Tao that can be named is not the real Tao. You are your awareness. You are not your thoughts. You are the witnessing presence that's observing your thoughts. And around those thoughts, you've built a persona. You call yours Bob. I call mine Pete. But like if we lived forever and I took you, Bob, to another planet, and on that planet, something about the atmosphere changed your body into a blob of blue goo. And we started calling the blob of blue goo. Funny that it's a bob of blue goo. Blob of blue goo. If we started calling that blob Harriet, and you live for 6 million years on this other planet, because you don't die on this planet, certainly after maybe 1,000 years, you would completely forget that you ever were Bob Crawford on the planet Earth. So what the point of that thought experiment is the witnessing presence that is kind of taking the amalgamation of the thing that you call yourself, this construct, your history, your past. Well, I'm a musician. I played in this band. I'm a Southern person, all that. I like this. I like that. Well, now you're a fucking blob, dude. And yet
same blob, different day.
That's right. There you go. And the essence, the animating principle of that blob is the same thing that animated Bob. So what you are isn't what you think you are. The Buddhists say they have two things. They go, who am I? Which is a great thing to sit and say, who am I? And we're not talking about I'm Bob, I'm from the South. I'm saying, who am I? When you say I, what do I mean? And then they follow that up with who's asking, which is just, if the first one doesn't bake your noodle, which it doesn't, for a lot of people, because you'll go, I'm Pete, I'm a 6'6" Lithuanian. You have all these answers. You go, who's asking? Who's asking in that quiet, weird, echoey, dark, staticky filled khaki sandstorm behind your eyes? You say, who am I? Who is asking? Who's asking? That's it. That's true self, false self. So Richard Rohr says, the primary the point of spirituality, of religion, is to get you to identify and get you in relationship to your true self, to know who you are, we would say in Christian language, in God, who you are in God. By the way, which is the point of almost every fairy tale, including Harry Potter. I like to point out Harry Potter is from special blood, royal blood. That's all the story, that you're from something greater and something mysterious, something way bigger than your sad British family. You're from Hogwarts. Why do we tell that story over and over and over? It's because it's your story. It's everybody's story, is what Merton and Rohr and all these people are trying to say, is wake up. You're not Harry Potter, the dweeby thing. You're Harry Potter, the wizard, and you have a birthright.
You're the beloved. You are the beloved.
You're the beloved. Yes. Yeah. And it's better than laser beams and Petronius Conspecto. It's your beloved. You belong. Your trust of God is, well, let me put it to this. I would say, because who you are deep down is divine. I would say when you die, you're actually going in rather than going out. It was there the whole time. I think you and I will go, when we're there, we'll go, it was there the whole time. And I don't know if we'll actually be there as separate entities, but we'll realize it will have been there the whole time. Does that jive with you?
Yeah, that does. It does. Yeah, it's more of a falling away than coming to, I guess, is the way.
Right.
I think about Henry Nouwen. Have you ever read Henry Nouwen?
No, a lot of names I'm getting.
He was a great, was he Catholic? I don't know if he was Catholic, but he spent a lot of time working with special needs individuals. But he has a sermon, he talks about the beloved, and it's it's like that moment where Jesus is baptized by John, and the dove comes and lands, on his head, and God says, "You are my beloved." You know? And that's who we are all the beloved. We are all, we are all chosen by God. Like we're all chosen by God.
That's a big Richard thing, is that I grew up in a church that worshiped, nothing wrong with worshiping, but like worshiped Jesus instead of realizing that he was demonstrating, he was modeling what a human life is to be. And we're all to wake up in this life, not just later, but now. That's a Richard Rohr thing too. He goes, it's heaven all the way to heaven. That you're supposed to have this realization here and now. And there's no other time to have it but here and now. And now, of course, everybody knows I'm going to bring this up, the prodigal son, which, as I always say, is Jesus's closer. It's the most agreed upon.
Yes.
What do you guys, what's your second encore these days?
No hard feelings every night.
No hard. Wow.
That's our prodigal son.
Of,
that's it.
Yes.
That's our prodigal son.
That song is just, if you guys haven't heard No Hard Feelings, that's exactly what we're talking about. It even addresses the infinite potentials that it is running into Jesus in the sky, and it is going into a snow or a rainstorm. It's all of that. Yeah. It's just a masterpiece of a song. But the prodigal son, Jesus's closer, is, to me, it's like you're always with me and everything I have is yours. That's the punchline. So the father, who's the stand-in for God, says to the son who thinks he's a fuck up, he says, no matter what you're doing, I was there the whole time. We were never separate. We can't be separate. The whole thing was just a ruse anyway. Let's have a party. That's one of Scott produced a song about Roger Ebert's last words. Have you heard that song?
I don't know.
Scott produced it. He sent it to me.
What is it?
Forgive me. I can't. It goes. It's all an elaborate hoax. Those were Roger Ebert's last words. So, but he said it with joy.
Yeah.
This is the realization of the true self. There's a laying down of a burden. When you go, it's a hoax. There's a sad, scary way to say this was a hoax. There's also a beautiful, that's what my daughter's name means, by the way. Leela means the play of the universe. You could say the hoax of the universe. I like play or the dance, but it's a way of saying, like, Bob, to you right now, I'm saying, it's a Leela. It's a Leela. It's all for its own sake. It's all for its own evolution and growth and play and dance and exploration and look at all of the things that grow. It's the Buddhist thing. The lotus flower grows in the mud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the birth, the death, the resurrection that we're in. But the human ego just wants growth. It's like corporations. We just want growth. We just want winning.
And
then
we have
the
to
whole
keep
thing,
winning. Like, and how can
Yes.
you just keep winning? You can't keep winning. You can't.
That's right. That's the whole thing. And that's why the mascot for the Christian faith is nailed to a cross. That's the whole point, is like, look at it. There has to be a different game being played. It can't just be, does Bob Crawford win? Does Bob have a gold toilet? Does Pete have a gold toilet? When we were shooting Crashing, we would sometimes shoot in like $11 million penthouse apartments. And I was like, buddy, everybody's pooping, everybody's sleeping, everybody's eating, everybody's watching TV. Everybody, for the most part.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, it ain't there. It's one of my favorite Jesus things. Don't lay up your treasure where moth and dust and rust can corrupt it. Get better treasure. Otherwise, you just have a $70,000 TV, dude. Like, congratulations. Like not see you in hell, but like, you're still on fire.
Right.
You're still on fire. I don't mean hellfire. I mean, it's still written on running water. It's nowhere. It's
Right.
nothing and it's nowhere. So there needs to be a deeper dimension. And that's what spirituality has offered me.
Yeah. This is like, to continue the Richard Rohr line of thinking, is falling upward. And the idea that the first part of life, it's about achieving, collecting, and getting comfortable. And then the second part of life
building
is
a container.
Building a container. Second part of life is about getting rid of it all and shedding it and forgetting it and putting it aside. I talked to someone to get back to my daughter for a moment, because I think this is really relevant. Actually, I was getting my hair cut today, and the guy that was cutting my hair, he has his sister's special needs. And so we connected on that. And I said, and he was also kind of revealed to me his faith. And I said, when like you and I, we're always trying to achieve. Like we're just like, from an early age, you got to get good grades, and you got to be a success, and you got to make money, and you got to, buy a nice car or buy a house, and you're just completely, even now it's like, I want to do this podcast, and I'm going to do this thing with Sirius XM. I'm going to go do that. And we're going to record a record, and I just want to be. My daughter, she's in a wheelchair. She doesn't use her left hand. Her success is existing, like living, like she did she's achieved the most badass thing you can imagine. She survived 3 brain tumors, and she's got the scars to prove it. And she's like, our egos, me, your ego, my ego. She's free of that. I mean, it's not that she doesn't have an ego.
No, I understand.
She does, but that life goal of being and doing, like, she doesn't have that burden. She's 12 years old. She's, she's more like she'll be in Princesses Forever. God willing, but she feels music just like so intensely, and she's so joyful and so happy. Not all the time, most of the time.
Yes.
And so she teaches me, right?
Of course.
Because if I think about Hallie, the Hallie I want, I'm going to be angry and bitter and forever, and I'm going to burden her, right? But if I can get into Hallie's world and see the world the way she sees it, that's a good place to be. That's the place to be, right? And this is a tension, right? Because no matter how much you're like, I accept what has happened and I accept her as she is, there are times when you're just like, Hallie, would you get in that stander? Can we like, do we need to put your arm in a cast to straighten out your left wrist? And, all these things that we do to her. And we just, and we want her to learn, and we want her to be all she can be, but also accepting who she is and seeing ourselves in that, seeing it as being a gift, right? She's the gift. She's the teacher.
Yeah, Bobby, you're a delicious sandwich.
One last thing, one last bite.
Oh,
here
I'm not wrapping
on
up.
this,
You keep
but
going.
on this,
I just
on
wanted to
Hallie.
call you a delicious sandwich.
Before I forget, hopefully with spicy mustard too. I love
Of
some
course.
good old golden
Kidding me?
spicy mustard.
Oh my God.
When my wife, like I'm gone a lot, and my wife is doing a lot of the bathing. Like the work of Hallie is getting her in the bath, getting her out of the bath, getting her dressed, giving her medicine. She doesn't sleep. Like she needs to be turned. You and I, we like turn ourselves over at night. How many? We don't even know how many times. She'll get into a position and call out because she needs you to put her back in the place that she wants to be. So it is a very physically demanding, caregiving. It's very physically demanding. But the nights that I'm getting her dressed, I'm putting on her socks, putting on her PJs, and I've had this thought many times, and I've had it like where like we can talk about reading Richard Rohr or reading scripture, but when do we experience God? Like when are we feeling it? Like that's the mystery, right? Like we want to get to where we're feeling it, because I can talk to you about the prodigal son and what I learned about Luke, chapter 2 or chapter 4, and then I can go out and get in line at Starbucks and curse somebody out for whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like I can have these like human,
of course,
really frail, ugly human moment. I'm very capable of those as much as anybody else is.
Bob, yes.
But it's when you feel God, and one of the times that I have felt God repeatedly is like getting her dressed. And it's like, she can't get herself dressed. And so it's like, this is caregiving, right? And I think, man, this is what God wants us to do. Like, this is it right here. This is how he wants us to love each other, like to care for each other. Like the idea of like, just like, I think people feel this like with elderly parents more than with their children, You get your kids to the age when they can dress themselves, and that part of it for you is done. Like there's plenty of work to do, but that part's done. But a lot of people get to where they have an elderly parent, and then they're getting that person dressed or cleaning up that person, changing that person's diaper. And, we experience this with our daughter on a daily basis, and it's not lost on me, and I'm sure on my wife, that this is what God, this is a beautiful thing to do. Like, I wish I didn't have to do it. Like, I wish this wasn't the reality, but I think, it being the reality, there's something sacred about it.
Yeah. And Bob, see, beautiful sandwich with spicy mustard. So it's in Taoism, or it might be Chinese then, but I'm pretty sure it's Taoism, although it references the Tao. Yeah. The Great Way, so merging with God, is not difficult for those who have no preferences. So the Bob who isn't thinking about the life he wanted or this or the way it could have been, who's just doing what's happening, you merge into what Christians would call the kingdom of heaven, what they would call the Tao.
The kingdom of God is within you.
Kingdom of God, exactly, precisely. Richard also, he talks about that. He's like, this is a big thing in the West, is we think conversion is an intellectual experience that you and I can like talk our way there. But really, it's always an accident. It's always you changing a child that may not want to be changed, or bathing a child that's getting heavier every year, or whatever it might be. The joke is we practice to become as accident prone as possible. I love that line. But my favorite, and everybody knows I'm going to say this because it's my favorite Bible verses, and I always say it in the King James, I don't know why, but lest ye become as little children, ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God, which we mean here and now. So of course, I felt that way about I still feel that way about my daughter. She's splashing in the tub. She's right. She's with a slippery, bubbly, warm, fluid substance that none of us understand. You and I are no closer to understanding water just because I know it's 2 hydrogen molecules and 1 oxygen molecule. That means dick. That means a lot if you and I are trying to recreate it in a lab and build something. I understand it has its value. But I mean, in the big picture, that is a mystery. That is a swarm of atoms, and we don't understand what's going on. And she is right to play in it, and your daughter is right. And these teachings are so precious. But, us grown men would rather sit around and talk about the truth when the truth is always so much more naked, so much sillier, more playful, more vulnerable, all of the things. Then it's not neat in the container. That's why I went and had a nice present, P, is because you reminded me that, like, it's outside the lines. As much as we want to think we know what's going on, today is Monday and it's 2022 and all that stuff, it's outside the lines, and the profound truth is always going to hit us from the side when we're least expecting it. Because I've had those 4 a.m. rocking Leela, and I'm like, oh, wow, here it is. And it always happens when I stop fighting it.
Yeah, because you can be like, I just want to go to bed. Well, Hallie, why don't you go to sleep? Or, gosh, she keeps getting up. And I've had those moments. Of course. And you have the, like, thank you, God. Thank you. This is beautiful. She's beautiful.
Well, buddy, sorry, I have to. My biggest life hack is saying, yes, thank you. Everyone knows I say this all the time. But Leela's been sleeping kind of rough lately, and we've been getting up in the middle of the night. I got up in the middle of the night last night, and I've gotten pretty good. I'll say, yes, thank you, before I'm even out of the bed. Like, it's become a habit, and your brain has no idea what to do with that. It completely shifts you to thank everything or God for what's happening, and your brain just goes like, well, fuck, I was going to get all worked up.
You asked me where prayer is, where I am now in my prayer life, right? Because that ebbs and flows, right? And I noticed past week, I was on tour last week, and I was nowhere in my prayer life. Like, I take all these like theology books or like little prayer books, the Catholic, I still have these Catholic prayer, and I take them, and sometimes I don't crack them, I don't look at them.
Of course.
And, but one thing I've been really good at is at some point in the day, just when it strikes me, it's like, Jesus, I trust in you. To myself, I say that. I repeat that, like almost like a mantra. And or if I'm stressed out, or if I'm worried, or if I have a troubled thought, or if I feel little, if I feel small, if I've done something or said something that, man, when I say that, when I do that, I'd say, just Jesus, I trust in you. And that's a prayer.
Mm-hmm. And that's a grounding and powerful one that transforms you in real time. That's exactly right. Yes, thank you is a prayer. And it's the prayer I say the most. Because I do affirmations in the morning. I write them out, and I write, I trust the flow. I trust God. I trust myself, but I put capital S self. And there's it's not ego. It's not going, I'm God, because I'm not running the show. But when you realize who you are deepest is God, you're like, trusting all of this, even trusting your own death, is trusting yourself. Like, who you really are is at the center of all of this. That takes away all of that Freudian angry dad, drunk dad God, who can't wait to hit you with a belt because you're a bad boy. All of that psychology gets mixed up, and this is Richard too. We end up making a God that looks like us instead of the other way around. We should be trying to look like God, which is what? Diverse, self-sustaining, yes-anding, nurturing, growing, spread, all of that stuff that you see in nature, and we make it like our drunk dads. And you can't blame us. It's such a heavy wound.
That just goes along with this idea that we could have, we could have started a game, like every time we say George Harrison, you eat a cookie or do a shot or something like that, because again, in one of these interviews, I saw George Harrison says, like, why aren't we talking about death? Why aren't we practicing death? We don't want to talk about it. Nobody wants to talk about it. And it's like, that's the idea of like that, those affirmations you make in the morning or the prayer I say in the middle of the day. If we can make those meaningful habits, like not, sometimes you just got to go through it. I think the goal that I'd like to get to is where my prayer habit is almost, it's second nature, and it's like brushing your teeth, right? Because slip, and you lose that maintenance. And I think part of it is building up this muscle memory. So when the shit goes down, you've got somewhere to go. You got somewhere to go that's familiar, And I think like if we take that, we talked about being present being like the key in surviving tragedy or experiencing joy. Being present is the key. If you're present, you're gonna enjoy the ping pong game, and you're gonna be able to deal with receiving the worst news of your life. If you can be present, and death will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's
As
what
Ram Dass
Harrison was
says,
trying to tell us.
Just another moment. Yeah. That's right. It's. I'm looking at Ram Dass right now. He's on my desk. Not in the astral plane. There's a picture of him. But the denial of death. He talks about when you stop denying death, it frees up all that unconscious energy that you were using to push it away, and it allows you and imbues the present moment with all of this joy that otherwise would have been used to suppress these inevitable things. It's not an error. It's not a mistake. It's what we're here to do. It's what we're light, dark, life, death, all this stuff. It's all happening. It's all beautiful. Let's get you out of here because I've taken a lot of your time, but with a couple fun questions. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Great. I also want to say, man, I really needed this. I needed this chat today. Not every day am I in the mood, and this, like we were saying, this one fed me. So I'm really glad that we had this time today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Have you ever almost died?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I was in I was in a car accident when I was young, and somebody was driving and flipped the car, and it spun on the hood, but we were all unscathed.
What do you remember of it? Were you
I remember
the whole time?
I remember trying to tell the person to slow down, and I remember the car turning. I remember all of it.
Wow.
And I remember being in the car with it spinning on the hood, and I remember us, being okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Are
and then
you
there were
still
probably
friends with the guy driving? No. Was it over after that day?
It never was the same again.
Yeah.
It never was the same again. And we were young. But many people young like we were in similar situations did not survive that. Survive things like that. So it was really miraculous. And then there are probably like not millions of them, but there's probably had some pretty close calls. I can't. That's the one that you say, and I can remember it. But tonight, I'll probably remember 6 or 7 other.
No, it's funny. Our conversation before this is one of the reasons I like asking that. It's an interesting thing to kind of contemplate and think about. Tell me a name droppy story. I know you work with so many incredible musicians. You were telling me you're about to open for Ringo in Boston.
Oh yeah.
Tell me.
First of all, what's wrong with name like people have people
love
and I
it.
used to be like they're name but then I thought about it, and I was talking to a friend and talking about another friend, and the friend said, well, he's really name droppy, talking about our mutual friend. And I was like, but he really cares about you, and he's a great guy. And that led me to the kind of like really ponder. It's like, is there anything really wrong with name dropping? Like, what
you're using it to be like, I know them, so I'm important.
Your ego. But if you're like, holy crap, like we were having lunch, dinner, and Ringo Starr walked up to our picnic table.
Yeah, that's a great story.
It was really cool. That was a really cool experience. And, when you get in a band, or like you must experience this, like with what you do for a living, you have experiences like this. And then like, I got to the point where I wouldn't tell anybody about them. Like we can only talk about them in the band, or someone like you, like friends of mine who also experience those experiences on an, I want to say regular basis, but
for fear of jealousy, or that you'll sound like
a name dropper
person. Yeah. Like a name dropper.
Right.
Or also just be like I saw you guys at the bowl, and David Crosby was backstage. I remember seeing
it. That picture comes up on my phone all the time. I never posted it, but you know how like your phone sends you pictures and stuff. That one, me, him, and me, David Crosby, and Seth. Like there's a picture we took, and I'm like, that was so awesome. Like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, but
does any stick out? Go ahead.
Well, one time we played Jimmy Kimmel Live, and I
think I might have been there.
We rode back. This woman Val rode back with us in our van, and we had dinner with Pete Holmes.
Get the fuck out of here!
Yeah. Somewhere in LA. And I was like,
I almost ruined it by being like, I ruined it. I was there. Wait, Bob, I was there for that. That is so funny. What a great and hilarious and gracious answer. You haven't done the Ringo shows yet, or have you?
We did this weekend. Yeah.
And what is he like? Is he still enjoying it?
81 or 82 and does jumping jacks. He is light on his feet. He runs out on stage, and he runs off the stage, and he plays drums like he's 25. And
wow.
It is exciting to watch him to say that this is possible. This is possible. Right. And he exudes gratitude and joy. And you sense that, and I know he's been through a lot of tough things. And I just sense that like whatever, because again, with the Beatles, like they were the only 4 people who experienced that. And it was isolating and it was difficult. You know, it was a blessing, but it was also a curse. And they all had things they had to go through in their life after that. And he strikes me as being reconciled with it and grateful for it. And I sense he feels blessed to be doing what he's doing today. So he exudes something beautiful.
Do they play Octopus's Garden?
In the set, I don't think they actually played it in the set. So it's all stars. So it's like Colin Hay from Men at Work plays one guitar. The great Steve Lukather, who was in Toto, plays the other, like probably one of the greatest guitar players in the history of music. This guy, Thriller album, like Toto was the band for the Thriller album. Like we can't forget that. Like Toto wrote Human Nature.
I never knew that. What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible. But just, so they do like Hold the Line, Rosanna, and Africa. And they do the bass player for the Average White Band. So they do one of those great funky instrumentals. Is it Edgar Winter plays the piano? Johnny Winter passed, played guitar. I think Edgar Winter plays the piano. If I get that wrong, I'm so sorry. But so they do Free Ride, which everybody knows Free Ride.
Yeah, of course.
Frankenstein, that great instrumental, Frankenstein.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So it's a great show. It's like the greatest cover band. And then Ringo does like Photograph and the encores with a little help from your friends. And we got to go up there and sing, you know, and it was, you know, I'm convinced like we've not won a Grammy. We've won like some other awards, but like, I think no matter how many records we sell, no matter what we achieve as the Avett Brothers, the most cherished memories will be, I'm going to name drop, being on stage with Bob Dylan at the Grammys, you know, recording with Rick Rubin, being on stage with Bob Weir, being on stage with Ringo, like these like little things that don't make or break you, but they are the icing on the cake. They're just they're the beautiful moments that you just cherish.
Yeah. Oh, what a great answer. Let me see. I think we're there. Last question. Can you tell me a time in your life when you laughed really, 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 really hard? Maybe you were a little kid. Maybe someone fell down. Maybe someone farted. These are the prompts I give. Well, it doesn't have to be a great or a classy story. I'm just
my he'll turn 11 tomorrow. And I have great memories from being that age or around about there. And you get a best friend. Like that's kind of when you get a best friend, you know?
Yep.
And having your friend come over your house and you're just the funniest, the stupidest thing, makes you laugh to where you're crying and you got snot coming out of your nose and you can't catch your breath. And so I have like memories of those things like that. And then but similar to that, when we started the band, Scott was dating his now wife in Greenville, North Carolina. And so we would play there frequently. And often the week ended with me and Seth driving back together. And we would drive in my truck, my Toyota Tacoma pickup truck. And we would it was that adolescent humor that we would just come up with things and we would just be laughing so hard that we were crying. And we experienced a little bit of that this weekend. And to be, and that, so I can't say a specific moment. I can think of many moments.
No, you're talking about
it's all that feeling, feeling
yeah.
of just like, this is so stupid, but for some reason, this is where my humor is. This is where my humor
This is
lives.
one of the things that makes me grateful, because when I'm touring and I'm with an opener and we're laughing, there's a parallel to those sleepovers you had when you were your son's age. And that is something to be Ringo Starr level grateful for. What a cool answer. I love that. Yeah. It made me think of one. Maybe this will make you laugh. When I interviewed Seth and Scott, it was in Scott's studio. Okay. And I had met Scott before, yes. But I was walking into his studio for the first time. And the first thing I saw was a giant painting of him naked. It was a nude. Yeah. And we both, it was a great painting. And there's no body shame here. But it is sort of like, and here I am naked. And we were both sort of looking at it. And I went, there was a beat of silence. And I just went, did you fluff before that? You fluff it up a little bit? And he went, oh yeah, you got to fluff up before paint. And we just laughed so hard. But it was like, you had to address it. You can't look, if there was a naked painting of me right there, I'd have to be like, Bob, thanks for doing the podcast. That's me naked. I did, I tossed it around just a little bit before I did it. And then we can do the interview. But that came to mind as you were talking about laughing with those guys. And it was
they're great for that.
Junior high laugh.
Yeah. And they're great for making funny lyrics to their songs and other songs. And
I believe it.
And there
ain't no ham.
Right. There's just, I really appreciate those guys for being like that,
I believe it.
It's special.
What you guys have is special, and what you're creating is special. And I really think this conversation is going to hit people in a really hard to reach part of the heart. And I'm so glad that Josh Church, the wonderful Josh Church.
Oh yeah. Well,
put
this
us
is
in touch.
his idea. Yeah,
his idea.
Just so he could so talk about the ego, so selfish, so he could listen to this conversation.
What a selfish son of a bitch. Gosh. No, he made it happen, and I'm so glad he did. Bob, would you say, keep it crispy? It's how we end. The guest says the catchphrase, and then we'll be out.
Keep it crispy. Do you need another one?
No, I loved it.
Keep it crispy.
I love that you think we needed another one. It was perfect. Thank you so much, my friend. I will absolutely see you guys next time you're through LA, and maybe we'll go out to dinner again. Either way, I'll be there just for the church. Church.
I'll be name dropping it after we do it.
To me. Only to me.
You made it weird. You made it weird.